because of this horrific story out of Chadwicks. In studio is Commander Francis Coots of the New York State Police and Trooper Jack Keller. Gentlemen, good morning, and thanks for coming in this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
What do we know today? Any more than what we knew from the press conference yesterday?
No, I can tell you that there's a number of leads that are still being followed up. After we had the press conference, we reconvened with the investigators that are actually conducting the investigation, along with Don Lupi and Scott McNamara from the District Attorney's Office. Yeah. So again, there's a number of things that still need to be done, and there's a lot of work still in front of us.
So I mean, you know, some questions I'm going to ask you probably won't be able to tell me. So,
well, you know, a lot of the questions that do get asked, we certainly have some answers, but we certainly don't want to impugn the integrity of the investigation.
Got it. First off, the one thing we heard a lot on TV about is the rumors going around that they had caught the child, the 19-year-old. I don't want to call him a child; he's an adult. He's passed away, but he had been caught involved in some molestation with an underage child. Yesterday it was addressed. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Certainly, that is out there in the media. I've read written reports. I've seen it on television. However, there's been nothing that we could say that confirms any of those types of allegations.
All right. And you know, you wonder when you look at the conservative, fundamentalist beliefs that seem to be coming out of this church. What is the definition of a molestation? Would it be, I mean, we see that as an underage child. They could see that as just having contact with another female, being unwed.
Good point you make, and the way the law enforcement looks at it is it's a legal term, and the way we interpret it is that what has happened to another child.
Yeah. Trooper Keller, the victim that is still alive, the 17-year-old, what can we say, how badly? It seems to be very bad. The rumors that it's horrific.
Well, certainly we're keeping in touch with the hospital, and the extent of injuries are pretty substantial. So I think long term we're going to see what injuries play out here. But certainly they're still talking to the investigators.
Is there any truth to the fact? I've heard that he was put into an induced coma because of the pain that he suffered from the injuries. Do we know anything about that?
I've not heard that.
I haven't heard that.
All right. What do we know about this church? And beyond that, there's this little thing called the First Amendment, which what I would imagine plays a big role in the investigation.
I think we have to remember is that we do have the First Amendment, and law enforcement isn't here to investigate criminal activity that may have taken place that caused the death of one child and the injuries to another child. That's what we're concerned about. What someone does in their church, as long as it's not breaking the law, that is not our purview. And so we're really concerned about the freedoms of certain people and the ability to express those feelings, but we want to make sure that everyone's obeying the laws.
Based on the press conference yesterday, it seemed it took you quite a while, investigators quite a while, to be able to find the 17-year-old because no one seemed to be cooperating.
It's not that they were being uncooperative, as that they were worried about what their actions had brought and what type of ramifications that they were facing.
So that's something you probably see when you know, they're worried. At this point, they had to be worried about themselves.
Usually the number one concern if somebody's done something wrong.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question that I know you can't answer, but I just have to ask it. Maybe I'm just venting. How does a mother and father, how does this happen?
That's a great question.
And
I don't know if anybody has an answer for that. I know you started off the conversation by saying he's 19 years old, but he's still a child, and he's still their child, and he's no longer on the face of the earth, and it's because of certain people's actions that caused this death. And we're investigating it, and I can assure you, speaking to Scott McNamara, speaking to Chief Inseri yesterday, that the people that are responsible will be held accountable. And even though we won't be able to bring this child back, maybe we can prevent someone else being injured.
And when you went in, when you were able to go in, you had a warrant to go in, but that warrant was specific. There's only so much you could do there, right?
That's correct. We were looking for a crime scene. We couldn't start pawing through the files of this church. We were concerned where this crime happened. We wanted to make sure that we could glean any type of evidence from that crime scene. But we also have to look at the rights of everyone involved.
Where was the 17-year-old found? He was upstairs or somewhere?
That's right. He was in the church itself. I can't tell you exactly which room. I just don't have that information. But he was definitely inside the church.
Was it so bad that he had to be taken out by ambulance?
No, he wasn't taken out, but he was transported by ambulance. But we were able to get him out.
Okay. And he was speaking at that point.
That's correct.
Okay,
yes.
Andrew.
So what does this mean for the future of this church, if you can even say anything about that? I mean, is it going to continue regular practices? Do you think that this will break up the church?
I don't have an opinion on that because the church is separate from the criminal investigation.
Right.
Whatever else is going on in the church, that's correct. Right. They still have their rights to worship. They still have their rights to gather. And we're not looking at the church per se. We're looking at what happened in the church.
Now, I know you have one, but along from his question, is it true that the mother and father who were arrested, that they are the ones that purchased the building, which was once a school, or is that something that I have incorrectly?
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that either. I think it was. I think the church purchased the property.
All right, Jeff.
There's been rumors going around about some type of body mutilation, specifically the genitals. Can you comment on that at all?
In what respect, Jeff?
That maybe that parts of the body were cut or severed.
No, I can assure you that nothing like that. There was just a phenomenal amount of injuries to the deceased as well as to the injured.
Would you describe that as torture?
I don't want to use that. That's kind of an inflammatory word.
Yeah.
And I know
punishment.
I know that Chief Insera was very careful in his wording yesterday, but the injuries were severe.
Can I ask as well? Chief Insera said that these counseling sessions, to his knowledge, were not typically physical. It would seem like the extensive alleged beating that occurred there. Was there any evidence that he was bound or tied up during this beating? And the only reason I ask is because it would seem like, whether it's your parents or a friend, if you're being subject to that type of abuse, at some point you respond physically yourself, and it doesn't seem that at this point there's any evidence that happened.
I don't have any information about that. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I'm not aware of that, and I've not heard that specifically.
Same.
Specifically, we did hear, though, that there was a sin, or and God knows what that could be, but and they were literally beating him, punishing him because he would not confess to the sin. Is that the case?
Back to Jeff's point, was a counseling session, and whatever happens within the church for the counseling session, I think by definition, it's something that's a dialogue between people. Yeah. When it starts getting into physical, I think you go beyond the counseling. Why they were actually engaged in counseling, I believe the investigation will show what transpired and why it led to actual beating. But what they were talking about before it became physical, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
How about, we've heard some criticism of the hospital staff, because at one point the hospital had said that there was a gunshot wound. So in defense of the hospital staff, how could they make that mistake on the 19-year-old?
I think that I can't defend the hospital enough. Yeah. The work that they do every single day. Right. And when they bring in a person that is so severely injured, such as the deceased, they were leaning on the side of what caused this.
So the injuries had to be so bad.
Correct.
It's that bad.
Correct. That's correct.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of where I was going, and when I say in defense of them,
sure.
They did a great job. The hospital did a great job, and
if you can't tell whether there was or was not a gunshot,
correct,
how bad must those injuries have been?
Correct. The hospital clearly erred on the side of caution. And that was the reason, and I believe that Chief Insera got this across yesterday, that was the reason why we entered the way we entered. We wanted to ensure the officer's safety and safety for the community as well.
Got it.
So do the Leonards, we do know that obviously they have Lucas and Christopher. This Christopher is the 17-year-old. Do they have any other children other than the youngest, the 8-year-old child?
You think I would have had the information on that question? I should have anticipated that, and I'm sorry, I do not.
Okay, I'm just curious.
You know, I had heard there was a younger, but I don't. Again, we've heard a lot of rumors, and that's something you can address here as well. You know, there was a day when you just had to worry about the people on radio, TV, and newspaper. Now, with social media, I mean, the stuff just goes rampant, and everybody wants the information,
And they want it right away.
And they want it right away.
This is something that we have to consider, and that's
Yeah.
to juggle the whole, you know, how much facts can we give out at the same time, keep the case and,
Yeah.
you know, make sure we don't jeopardize it.
Well, it's because the media's all, how does Twitter get to scoop everybody? And the problem is a lot of the stuff that gets out there is not true.
Well, that's just it. You gotta
there's
make
no
sure we get the
accountability
facts
there.
out there as
Right,
much as we can
yeah.
without jeopardizing the case.
So then you get people like us saying, well, you got to tell us the details because everybody has it.
I think you'll get it in the end.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to cases completed, you'll get a lot more.
And the DA was very quick yesterday to shut things down. I mean, you could see that his main concern is an upcoming trial.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. He did a phenomenal job.
The 4 charged with assault at this point are not charged in connection with Lucas's injuries or death?
Remember, the 4 assault charges are for the child that's still alive.
Okay.
The manslaughter are obviously for the child that's dead. In the investigation, as we started off, very preliminary. The New Hartford Police Department, the New York State Police, they're working together, and we want to make sure that we have an airtight case, so when it gets presented to a grand jury, and ultimately when it goes to trial, if that's where it goes, we're going to have a solid case and people are going to go to prison.
To this point, the only 2 charged in his death are the mother and father.
That is correct at this point.
Wow. Interesting. No, and I'm assuming you guys probably do what we do as well to get some background information. The web is a great place to find information.
Sure.
Nothing at all on this church. You can't find a single thing.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
But again, it's a small church too.
Right, right.
That has a lot to do with it as well.
But even the small churches tend to have a little website or something. There is nothing out there.
Very quiet.
Very quiet. But has there ever been a suspicion? Have there ever been calls to police that you know about? Any investigation in the past about, because the neighbors there all say the same thing. I think it's a cult. But we also use that word, and anything we don't know something about, we're suspicious of. But has there been anything previously?
Lieutenant O'Neill, Chief and Sir, and I, we had that discussion yesterday.
Yeah.
And all their information shows is that the only time the police went there was because the church called, because of something that may have been going on. They were actually requesting for calls for service.
Ever seen anything like this before? I know you guys see bad things.
I just entered my 33rd year of law enforcement just last week, and I've never encountered anything like this.
No.
Gentlemen, we appreciate it. Trooper Jack Keller, Commander Francis Coots, thanks so much for taking the time this morning. Terrible story,
Thank you.
and we appreciate the update. We have much more to talk